All right. Well, good morning. Thank you for joining. My name is Bill Taranovich. I'm a member of SCORE. SCORE is a volunteer organization that also has a booth here at the job fair, so you should check us out. Um, we are an organization to help businesses. And with that, I would like to start. So our topic today is what makes an attractive candidate. So a lot of this would, to me, be common sense, but I'm told that it's not always the case. Along the presentation, anybody that has any questions, go ahead. In the bottom it says chat. Please ask the questions. I don't mind stopping, and we can also go backwards. So what makes a good candidate is training, experience, and history of performance. If you're in college, you're training for something, you probably don't have any experience and you have no history of performance, don't let that bother you. If you have none or all of the above, there's still a path to success. So when you have chosen to go out into the job market or seek out another job, oh geez, I spelled perform wrong. Look at that. Sorry. Know the job you're applying for, and whether you can perform in that capacity or the position offers. Actually, I can't even see that. All right. Training to get you there. I apologize for misspelling that. I corrected that, and then it for some reason zipped out. Be prepared to show your competence, experience, or interest for that position. Know the overall scope of the company and whether a position higher or lower than the one you're applying for may be relevant to today or the future. Know you can fulfill the job requirements. If the job requires you to lift 50 pounds, start at 6 a.m., work 6 days a week, etc. If you apply to a UPS distribution and can't lift more than 5 pounds, you're applying for the wrong job. If you want to work 3 days a week, don't apply to an organization that requires 6 days a week. And I'm gonna go back. I'm not gonna bore you with a ton of PowerPoint. So hopefully we're gonna go back and talk about each thing that I'm bringing up at length and with some examples, and then there will be a question and answer period at the end. So I really encourage you to ask questions. Apply for no job you have no intention of taking if offered. Don't waste your time or their time, because you'll end up burning a bridge. You will not be allowed to come back and apply for another position if you've done that. Do not waste your employer's time by accepting a position and then trying to negotiate a different set of terms later. Again, I'm gonna go through the slides and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna give examples, okay? First impressions, never show up late for an interview. Dress for the position that is better than the job you're applying for, okay? So I recently retired in June, and I'm wearing sweatshirts a lot, but if I showed up in a sweatshirt today, your impression of me would be considerably different. And I know that, and you should know that when you're sitting on the other side of the desk. Be prepared. Practice and rehearse. In today's society, we do a lot of typing, we do a lot of texting. Our handwriting seems to be in decline. But if you're applying for a job, oftentimes you'll be asked to fill out a job application. And if your handwriting is illegible, that'll greatly detract from your ability to get hired. So practice a little bit. The day before, just free up your hand. Start making sure you spell words correctly. Make sure that your hand feels okay with holding a pen again. I know this sounds small, but I see so many people that they can't write correctly. I'm going to go back and I'm going to qualify myself a little bit. A step that I missed because I'm frankly a little nervous. I would prefer this to be in person as opposed to a Zoom meeting, so I could see the audience body language. But I was a John Deere dealer for 30 years in the states of New Hampshire and Maine. And I had 50 employees, 4 locations. We did $20 million a year in business. I started off in 1991 with 2 employees. Um, did very little business. I ate hot dogs for several years. Um, I rolled through employees like underwear, and it wasn't that I was a bad boss, and it wasn't that I was buying a bad or hiring bad people. I didn't really have an understanding of what needs to be fair, and what makes a good employee for the position, and what is not a good fit. So it took me a long time to figure it out. And uh, after I got it figured out, a lot of my employees were with me over 20 years. So that's typically a good testament to the work environment. Uh, and it took me a while to figure that out. So I hope I'm going to convey the information to you, that you understand that it's a difficult process, not just for you to apply, but the employer to go through the review process as well, and make sure that you're coming into a family that everybody's happy with. Okay. So back to practice and rehearse. So if you have trouble with eye contact, uh, oops, that's not good, is it? If you have trouble with eye contact, practice. If you have a friend and you tend to look at the floor, try not to do that, because uh, your potential employer or the person that's interviewing you is also watching your body language. So if you don't feel confident, if you look shifty, this is all being picked up. Um, so be confident, but don't be arrogant. Uh, know what your capacities are, and be prepared to express them. For instance, if you're applying for a graphic uh, arts position and a graphic design position, and this is the best you can do on a resume, you're probably applying for the wrong position. Okay, so this slide is blank, right? Can't say anything, hopefully, except for personal appearance can limit opportunities. Now, originally I had a picture in here, and the picture was of somebody that had made some pretty significant life choices as far as facial decorations. If those are the life choices that you're making, know that you potentially are limiting your opportunities for the future. Now, if any of you are young college students thinking that, well, this is the way I am, this is my personality, I'm never going to change, things change. Your attitudes change, your desires, your earning opportunities. When I was discharged from the military, after years of having a crew cut, I swore up and down I would never, ever, 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 ever cut my hair again. Nobody in the world could convince me otherwise. I was 100% committed to that. And then a few short years later, I realized, man, with hair halfway down your back, employers aren't really taking me seriously. So I was limiting access to potential earnings and opportunities in life. Now, fortunately for me, I can cut my hair, and I did. If you've made some permanent decisions with your appearance, I caution you. Okay, I'm trying to be very polite. It does not matter where you start; it matters where you finish. And some of the previous slides that I had got into, and I'll go back to. If you've gone in and applied for a position, and you're not a particularly good fit for the position, ask if there's other opportunities. Don't just say, okay, well, thank you very much for your time. When I was 16 years old, I ran away from home, and I hitchhiked all over the country, ended up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Now, why I ended there, I have no idea. I got a place to stay for a little while, so I said, well, I should earn some money. So there was a Pizza Hut that was advertising for a dishwasher. So I'm 16 years old and I do have long hair at that time, and I am in a Yankee in Alabama. Right, so a hippie Yankee are not well looked at least at that time. Uh, so I applied for the job, and I put down on the application that I was 18 years old because I didn't have suspicion about my age and being so far from home. So the manager interviewed me and he says, geez, he goes, I can't hire you because you're only 18 years old. We serve beer, and in the state of Alabama, you have to be 21 to work in a restaurant that serves alcohol. I said, okay, well, thank you very much for your time. And I was ready to leave. He goes, He goes, just put down on your application you're 21 years of age. Okay. He goes, you're only going to be a dishwasher, so it doesn't really matter. Back then, obviously, it's a long, long time ago. There was no computers. There was no interface with anything. So you could say what you want, and there was very little opportunity to look that up. So I said, okay, I put down 21 on the application. So I started as a dishwasher, showed up to work every day as I should. They paid me as they agreed they would. Everything was cool. And every minute that I was not washing dishes, I was watching the cooks. I just watch them, how they prepared the food, what they did, what their policies and procedures were, what the mechanisms were for interfacing with the wait staff, for no particular reason, but just general interest. I just found it fascinating. So after being there only a couple of weeks, the cook came into work one day and became violently, violently ill. Runs into the bathroom, and half an hour later, still not coming out. And it's clear he's not coming out. The wait staff is flipping out because all these orders are stacking up. Nobody's there to cook it, and people are about ready to leave. So I went to the wait staff and I said, can I do this? And they go, well, what makes you think you have the capacity to do what he's supposed to do? I said, well, I've been watching. They go, well, the choice is either the customers leave or you give it a shot. I gave it a shot. Okay. The next day I was promoted to cook. Within a month, I was assistant manager managing one of the shifts. So it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you finish. So do we have any questions yet? Nobody? Not a one? Oh, we got 18 participants. That's pretty good. So I'm going to go back, start talking about stuff. All right. So when you go to interview or when you go to apply for a job, gain as much information as you can. And I am really embarrassed about misspelling perform because I corrected that earlier. Know if it's within the boundaries of what you're capable of, or you can be trained to get there. For instance, if you're really bad with math, you probably don't want to apply to a bank. Be prepared to show competence if you have any previous experience. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter where you start. I had an employee that came to me from Radio Shack, and he was a smart guy. And he started in a sales position, and he was a good salesman, but not really a great salesman. He was not that comfortable with the pressures that sales put on him. So after a period of time, he asked to be moved to service. So he became the service manager. He was very good at that because he's very good with detail. He was so good with detail that when the store management position opened up, I promoted him to store manager. He performed wonderfully. So he went from an employee as a salesperson, as every day he didn't know if he really wanted to come to work or not, to a highly profitable position for himself as store manager. I sold my business in June, and he, along with many others, I had employee contracts that were part of the sale negotiation, and Mike was part of that. And I knew Mike was highly, highly competent, and I wanted him to have the opportunity to show himself. Okay. he had no particular training for the job before he came to work for me, but he acquired that training over the years working for me. So when I sold my business, it sold to a $250 million a year company with 548 employees. Within a month's time, Mike is number 4. A very prestigious position. I have another employee. Her name is Jessica. And she was a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through coffee girl. Young woman, very nice. Not a particularly high level of education, not anything that would say that she had any previous experience to work with me, but she came in and interviewed, and she interviewed very well, and she was professional in her demeanor, and she had a high level of typing skill, which not everybody has at our age. So I hired her as a service writer clerk, simply typing. Jessica's one of my proud accomplishments in my 30 years of business. She elevated from service clerk to service manager to managing a $5 million a year store for me. She married one of my fellow employees. They have a new baby. They have a home. She and her husband have a high level of income, and they're very, very happy. And she started as a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through girl. So again, it does not matter where you start, it matters where you finish.
Bill, we have a question that just popped up for you. Would you like to take it now?
Yes.
All right, this one is how to be honest, but also discreet if you do have a record, not violent, but just trying to re-enter the workforce and had such successful professional jobs in the past, but life happened.
Okay, so the best thing to be is always honest. So on your applications, it's going to ask, I believe it's still legal to ask, do you have any prior criminal history? Be honest, because you don't want to get the job and then get fired, because that makes it even harder to get the next job. So be prepared to tell the story. So be prepared to tell them that you're truly sorry for whatever you did. That will go a long, long ways. I have hired people that had some questionable life experiences. I gave them the benefit of the doubt, and I kind of watched and waited to make sure that they were genuinely sincere about what they told me when I hired them. So be honest. I mean, you don't have to walk in and say, "Listen, I got this present tattoo, and there's a reason for that." Don't do that. But as the conversation comes up, and it appears that you are moving towards the front of the ones chosen for the position, have that conversation and practice the conversation. If you have a partner, a wife, or a husband, practice it, and then you're more prepared to tell them. And do it with sincerity. Okay, any more questions?
We do have another one. It is, what were some of the attributes of the best employees that you noticed when you interview them? What stood out and what made you choose them over the other candidates?
Okay, so as years went on, I delegated responsibilities to my staff. So I created a company hierarchy chart, managers, and they were responsible for their team. So they did their own hiring and firing because they were responsible for their team. One day I was leaving work at the end of the day, and again I had four locations in Concord, Dover, Ospey, and Sanford, Maine. And I was leaving my office in Concord, and there was a young woman standing at the counter. And as I walked by, it became apparent that she was applying for a job. So I stopped, and the typical salesman's nature, engaged in a brief conversation at the counter, and I walked out. And when I walked out, I called the store manager over. I said, I'd like to see you for a second. I brought him behind the closed door, and I said, I don't know what she's applying for. You need to hire that woman. He goes, well, why do you say that? I said, she recognized that I was a person of authority when I walked through. She engaged me. She looked me in the eyes. When I asked her a question, she responded immediately. That woman is very sharp. Now, I'm not responsible for hiring, but I'm telling you, if you don't hire this woman, you're making a mistake. They didn't hire her. That's okay. That's okay. So they hired somebody else. That person failed in their position. They called her back, and fortunately she came in. She was a star. She came in as a clerk, and then she moved to management, and then she moved to a higher level of management. Very, very successful for both of us. A successful employee, it's a give and take. So if you create your own success, you give to the company. The company gives back with opportunities, with additional trainings, with additional income. And like with me, it was, for many, over 20 years. And those same people that, even though I sold the business, are still there. And one of the most important things to me, when I sold the business, besides getting a check for the business, was that they were well taken care of, and that their compensation plans would stay in place or get better, which was agreed to. I had a question prior to this, and it was, if I'm a veteran, should I identify myself immediately as such? A good employer or a good person would typically thank you for your service. But if it's not really relative to the position, like it may be in law enforcement or such, it probably won't change the weight of your consideration. It may. There are programs available through the government for veterans, which I have personally used. That a veteran had applied, they were not anywhere near the level that they needed to be for the position. But with the assistance of the federal government, they paid a portion of the salary until I could train that person to get to that level, which now was something that worked for both of us, and they did, and it worked well. All right, so somebody's going to ask questions because I've got a lot of time left. Nothing?
Phil, we have another question. What is the best way to research a position, and how much research should you do? How detailed do you need to dive into a company profile to prepare for your interviews?
Well, the first thing, if it's available, is the job description. That you should know it, and if you have the capability to fulfill it, or with some training, can you get there? So that's the best thing to know. And oftentimes, small businesses don't have job descriptions, so it requires an initial visit to go on and say, "Listen, I'm really interested in working for your company. Can you tell me what the job is?" And then write stuff down so you don't forget. And then have a conversation if you can meet those employment requirements. That's the most important thing to research, because a job description will tell you, hey, you got to be here at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, geez, my kids don't leave to school until 8. I can't get here till 9. Well, that's not the job that is open to you then. I had so I'll burn no bridges. I'll tell you another story. So when I first started off in business, I didn't have a lot of money, and I knew the way to expand my business was to get a road salesperson. And so I advertised for it, and I started interviewing, and there was this young man that had a lot of experience for road sales, seemed to have the proper attitude. So I hired him, and I said, you can start June 1st. And in the interim, the 2 weeks that you're giving your other employer notice, I'm going to go buy a brand new pickup truck and a trailer to facilitate the tools that you need to be the road salesman. Not, I couldn't even afford a new car myself at this time. So this is a major investment that I'm making into the company. So June 1st came and went, but the guy never showed up. Call, nothing. So I did hire somebody else. A year later, a similar position in my company came up. This guy comes back in and applies for the job. I go, you're joking. He goes, oh yeah, I know you're probably a little mad that, I didn't show up last time, but when I gave my notice, my employer gave me a raise, so I decided to stay. And I said, do you have any idea of the investment that I made to facilitate you coming into my company that just sat in the parking lot for months because it took me that long to find the replacement for you, the position that I hired you for? Don't ever walk into my building again. So, all right, no more questions. One more question.
We've got another question, Bill. This one is, what steps do you take to ensure that you didn't discount qualified candidates with disabilities that affect body language, for example, autism?
Okay, so there's discrimination laws that prevail. What step do we take? Well, myself as well as all my staff were trained to understand employment laws. So man, that's a real tough one. I would say that we did not disregard anybody due to an impairment. I had a bookkeeper that could no longer walk up the stairs, so I offered to install one of those seats that goes to her office. An employer doesn't have to tell you why they don't hire you, so it's a tough one. So if you have a disability, again, be honest about it. Say, listen, I have a facial tic, and I'm not being disrespectful by constantly twitching my eyes at you. It's something that I have, and yes, stop.
Yeah, so this is Misty Kennedy. I work here at Keene State College, and we're doing the behind the scenes. I actually just wanted to weigh in, Bill, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I used to hire when I worked at UNH. And one of the things that we would say before we would do an interview is just kind of what Bill was kind of speaking to, is as the individual who is interviewing, feel free to say, before we start the interview, I'd like to share with you that this is something about me that might impact my ability to interview or might impact our interactions. But we always ask the questions before we started the interview. Is there anything that we should know about you before we begin to interview that you think might impact how we perceive this interview? And so folks would oftentimes say, yeah, I have a tic, or I have a stutter, or I have, or I'm extremely nervous. Sometimes that in itself, I have anxiety, or I had a lot of things happen before I came in today, and I'm at the back of my head, my kid's home sick from school and I have a sitter there. All of those things impact an interview. So it's not just disabilities, it's also just life in general. So just having that conversation opener for you to say, I just want you to know something about me. I just want you to know this information before we start, and it may impact how this interview goes.
Cool. Thank you for that. We usually started the conversation on the other side saying what appeals to you about the position you're applying for. So that's a conversation starter. And that usually gives the person an opportunity to say what they like about the company that they are applying for, and how personal limitations may interface or not with the position they'd like to acquire. So.
And Bill, we have another question. Did you value and follow up on references that you'd receive, and how?
Oftentimes, yeah. Not always. Frankly, a lot of it had to do with the person's interview. If the person was very sincere, professional in appearance, prepared, that weighed so heavily on whether they'd be hired or not. So somebody like a bookkeeper, though, where company monies were at stake, yeah, we would call references. And we would ask permission to call previous employers. We'd always ask permission. We would never do it without permission. But we didn't always check references. A lot of it had to do with the interview. So practice. I mean, practice, and it doesn't appear today because I'm really nervous. I'm not really good at public speaking, but I'm a salesman by nature, and really, so much of our life is selling. Okay, I'm right now. I'm selling you that you think I know what I'm thinking about. I know what I'm doing. Hopefully, I'm selling you. When you sit on the other side of that desk, you're selling to the potential employer that you can get the job done. So being good at sales is not a bad thing.
And Bill, we have one more question. It's, what are some of the top interviewee mistakes that you saw repeatedly during the interviewing process? And what could we avoid?
Okay, top interviewing mistakes. Well, being late. Number one. If you're late, you're pretty much not going to be considered, because if you can't even show up for time for the interview, I'm going to expect that you can't show up for work. Inappropriate apparel. If you're applying for selling Cadillacs and you show up to a job interview in a t-shirt, probably not going to get the job. Cursing would be bad. That would put you out. It's hard for me to even describe, because all this to me seems like common sense. When somebody shows up, they want to look good. They want to speak appropriately. They want to speak respectfully. They want to be respectful of the other person's time. And all that spells success. So if any of you are thinking of starting a business, SCORE could be a wonderful opportunity. And you may not have, that's me. And you don't have to request me. There's a lot of people that are really, really qualified. SCORE today has a booth at this virtual job fair. I highly recommend you sashay over and say hello. There's some amazing talent in the SCORE volunteers. And again, the key word is volunteer. We don't charge, but a lot of us has vast business experience, and we're frankly willing to share it with you for free. So, things that would cost people thousands otherwise. Right now, I'm being paid as a consultant for a equipment dealership in Ohio, and for a 1-hour Zoom, I'm paid $1,000. So that'll give you an idea of the value of what you can obtain through seminars like this, workshops, and mentoring from SCORE. for free. Some of the workshops, there's a nominal fee to cover some of the expenses, but I mean, it might be $25. You know, there's people in our organization that have double PhDs, ex-CEO of Fortune 500 companies, brilliant people that, you know, I'm very humbled by to even sit in the same room with. So I
Bill,
recommend, yeah.
Yeah, this is Misty. Can you click on the take a workshop? I just want to show folks the.
Yeah,
Oh,
unfortunately,
actually,
that's a screen clip, so it won't let me.
all right, I'll actually open that up.
Okay.
You want to go ahead and stop sharing. I'll go ahead and share quickly. So this is for folks who, this is for small businesses. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
On your end, Gina? Great. So let me just move this. So there are a number of workshops that they do have. And again, this is if you're thinking about even stepping into starting your own business. For those of you who are job searching, I would encourage you to, we're going to go ahead and close out this workshop in just a minute here. And I would just encourage you to go on over to the booths again. Bill, will you be joining us if folks have any additional questions over in the booth segment?
I could. I didn't plan on it, but I could go there for a little while. Sure.
There are some other SCORE representatives in those
nothing came in.
booths, so maybe they could direct them to you, or get your email or whatnot. But with that, unless you have any final words, Bill, we'll go ahead and close out just a few minutes early, and we'll let folks head on over to the booths.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you, Bill.
Hopefully you pulled something away from this last 45 minutes that you can use.
Great. Thank you guys all so much. See you soon.
All right. Thank you.